Time now for French Connections, our weekly look at the intricacies of life here in France with Florence Villemino. Florence, great to see you. This week we're going to focus on the world of French music, and in particular a genre known as la chanson française.
That's right, and the recent passing of Jane Birkin was a reminder of just how attached French people are to la chanson française. And it's interesting because Jane Birkin was British, of course, but she was really a superstar during the heyday of la chanson française in the 60s and 70s, thanks in part to her collaboration with one of France's most beloved singers, Serge Gainsbourg. Now, when he was paying tribute to the singer, French President Emmanuel Macron pointed out that it's because she embodied freedom, but also because she sang the most beautiful words of the French language that Jane Birkin was a French icon.
So British Jane Birkin was an ambassador of la chanson française, and what is it exactly?
Well, you have the word chanson, which is our word du jour. Chanson comes from the Latin word cantionem, which is a song, and that is exactly what a chanson is in French. Now, la chanson française literally translates as French songs, but it's actually a distinct musical genre. Now, there's several styles of chanson française that have emerged over the years, but I guess the defining feature that really ties them all together is that it's all about the words. Chanson française is essentially a song that tells a story combining poetry and music, and it's the language used that's more important in a way than the melody compared to, say, English language pop music, where it'll focus more on the tune than the lyrics.
And it's closely intertwined with French culture and history. So where does it come from exactly?
Well, believe it or not, la chanson française traces its roots all the way back to the troubadours and the French lyrical poets of the 12th and the 13th century. So it's a very old style. It has very old roots, and it continued to develop and gain ground during the post-revolutionary Romantic period, but it really took off after World War I with singers like Charles Trenet, Charles Aznavour, and of course Edith Piaf. And they launched their careers in cabarets, but they also became recording artists, which is really lucky for us because it means that we still have traces of their songs today. So the trend continued following World War II with French artists like Georges Brassens, Serge Gainsbourg, who we already mentioned, Barbara, but also Belgian artists as well, like Jacques Brel. They were all dominating the airwaves. It's a very motley crew, so I made you a little selection.
Padam, padam, padam. Oh, je ne regrette rien.
C'est triste Venise, au temps des amours mortes. Ne me quitte pas. Il faut oublier tout, s'oublier.
Je suis le poinçonneur des lilas, le gars qu'on croise et qu'on ne regarde pas. Y a pas de soleil sous la terre.
C'était pas des amis de luxe, des petits castors et pollux, des gens de Sodome et Gomorre, Sodome et Gomorre.
Flo, by the 1960s, chanson française faced stiff competition from rock and roll and, of course, singers from the UK and the US.
And their French imitators, like Johnny
Hallyday,
exactly, the French Elvis. What was interesting, though, was the style of chanson française had to kind of reinvent itself. It became la nouvelle chanson française, so the new chanson française. So this was in the 60s, 70s, and well on into the 80s. So once again, there were stars from this era. Once again, Serge Gainsbourg, also Françoise Hardy, Jacques Dutronc, later France Gall, Michel Berger, Alain Souchon, Véronique Sanson, just to name a few. But what's interesting is they blended other styles. They brought in rock and pop influences, but they really stayed true to the tradition of chanson française, which the focus on the lyrics. We often say that even when they're singing, French people are talking. Here's another selection of music for you.
Ils travaillent tout comme les castors, ni avec leurs mains, ni avec leurs pieds.
Nous aimions le temps d'une chanson. La vie ne vaut d'être vécue sans amour.
Avance, on avance, on avance.
Elle passe ses nuits sans dormir, à gâcher son bel avenir, à vie de pianiste.
Now, Flo, though it's remained popular over the years, La Chanson Française has faced competition from, well, English music.
Absolutely, because of globalization, but also the superpower of the music industry in the US and in the UK. All this has meant that French music has faced very tough competition, so much so that the government had to step in. So this was in 1994 in a bid to stave off what was seen as an invasion of music from England and the US. France actually passed a law, it's called La Loi Toubon, which imposed quotas on the radio. Essentially, at least 40% of music played on the radio has to be French language music. And what's interesting is at the time it was met with very mixed reactions.
La loi des 40%, c'est la loi de la médiocrité, c'est la loi de la débilité, c'est une atteinte à la liberté des auditeurs.
Il y a bien un moment où il faut essayer de contenir cette pression. Et le quota, c'est peut-être la seule chose à faire. Mais c'est vrai qu'on peut essayer aussi de faire de très bonnes chansons en France.
So, Delana, the law is actually still in place, and it's put in question time and time again because increasingly French artists make music in English. Just think of Daft Punk or Air. So a lot of English language music coming from France.
True, I never did think about that. But let's talk about this law for a second because clearly it benefits Chanson Française as well as rap, French language rap, which is kind of a modern-day version of La Chanson Française.
In a way, it really is. And rap is really huge in France. It's actually, France is the second biggest rap and hip-hop market in the world after the United States. And it emerged in France in the mid-'80s following the example in the US. And it was immediately successful, perhaps because the terrain had already been favorable to this. At the time, there were popular rappers like MC Solar and I Am. This was in the 90s. And they adapted this idea that lyrics were really important. So rap, it's all about the lyrics in English, but especially in French. And especially today as well. Modern musicians who sing in French or rap in French, for instance, the Belgian musician Stromae, he's kind of in between genres. It's all about the lyrics. And as for the more traditional form of chanson française today, well, there's a bright future ahead, I guess you could say, because of all sorts of younger artists like Pomme, Clara Luciani, Angèle as well. And recently, a lot of people have been talking about a new artist named Zao de Sagazan. She's hailed as the prodigy of la chanson française with an electro twist, one to keep an eye out for.
Marionnettiste je suis et sur mon pas l'inverse les émotions sont des couleurs je suis le peintre qui les renverse.
J'ai deux passions, c'est la chanson française et la musique électronique et que j'ai essayé de trouver un juste milieu entre les deux. Je suis pas du tout au feeling, à l'inverse je veux mettre du sens partout.
So a younger generation, they're carrying the torch of la chanson française, which is a great thing to listen to if you're learning French because they're all pronouncing those words really well. It might make you a little bit moody though.
Flo, thank you very much for that. You can check out other editions on our website, france24.com, and tweet your questions to Flo at Flo Vilmino.